Hello and welcome everyone to another inventRight.com TV show. Before we get started, if you like the show, make sure to click on the thumbs up button down there below. Steve, we're pulling out an interview we did a little while back. You did a little while back. And this guy was just moderately successful. He licensed his company for $480 million. Yes, $480 million. What was the product?
SpinBrush.
What was his name?
John Osher.
John Osher. Amazing. But before the SpinBrush, you had another product, and they're related. What was the product before?
SpinPop.
SpinPop.
Lollipop.
Okay.
That would spin as you would lick it. It was great. But
Right.
there's a couple really important things I want people to walk away when they're listening to this, Andrew. And one of them is he took this mechanical little cheap mechanism that was in a lollipop and brought it over to a completely new industry. And he kind of reinvented this not reinvented, but he brought into an industry that was selling a product for $80.
Toothbrushes back in the day were the cheapest automatic toothbrush you get was $80.
And he took that same mechanism, brought it in, and he was able to put it in a smaller toothbrush or whatever. Cheap mechanical parts. Who cares?
And I forget what it was selling for back then, but I think it was like $6 to $9,
like
and nobody had it.
No, sometimes $4.99.
Right, that's when they got it down.
And
yeah.
no one believed, and he didn't believe either, that he was able to make that big switch in the marketplace and people would think it had value. So he had to do a little bit of testing himself to make sure that companies liked it, people liked it, so he could sell it or license it to a big company.
Mm-hmm.
So
he was successful. I think it was what was the name of those? It was Dr. John's brush or something like that. I'm getting the name wrong, but he did it under his own brand for a while. P&G saw the potential in it. He licensed it to Crest P&G. Crest SpinBrush was later called, right? And it was just mildly successful.
$485 million successful. Hey, you guys, this is two things I want you to walk away. Number one is this. If you find something that's working someplace else, sometimes you can apply it to another product. That's what he did. Brilliant. Technology existed, saw it over here, brought it over here, and it was a huge success. That's one thing I want you to walk away with. But listen to it. John gives you the roadmap of what he did. Now, a lot of people...
And I thought he was pretty humble in the interview, considering how successful he was. That's what I came away with.
He spilled his guts and told us all of it. Now, this isn't going to be for everybody, but if you've got those big ideas, you want to understand how it works in the big picture, you can license ideas. If you've got a business now that started and you're tired of it, you could possibly license it or sell it to another company.
Steve, we get people all the time. They're tired of running the business, and they're like, wow, if I license this to a big company, they could get it out in a much bigger way. I wouldn't have the daily headache of running a business.
There's so many different ways of cutting these deals, you guys. But I want you just to expose yourself to what one person did. It's a great interview. You're absolutely going to love it.
Okay, check it out, guys. Here we go.
Hi, John. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Stephen?
Great, John. John, I want to thank you for taking the time out. This is kind of an exciting time for me because I've been watching your products now for quite a few years, especially the SpinPop, and it was such a huge hit. In fact, it's probably still a hit today, isn't it, John?
The SpinPop is still on the market, in various places around the world, and it gets hotter at different times with different licenses.
Actually, the SpinPop, didn't it create a category, John, a few years ago when it first came out, because there's so many other candy, toy-related products now that you see on the market?
It did at the time. We called it interactive candy. And from the SpinPop, we went ahead and developed, we had M&M dispensers. We had a variety of power interactive candy products that opened up at the time a category that we did very well with, and then other companies got into.
And that was with Cap Toys, John, is that correct?
Yeah, we called it the Cap Candy division of Cap Toys, so people in the marketplace might know it as Cap Candy.
Okay, great. John, but today we want to talk about the SpinBrush. And our listeners and readers, they're people with ideas and inventors. And I guess the question I'm wondering, and I think they're probably wondering the same thing, how'd you do it? I mean, I had read a few things that you were walking in the aisles of Walmart and you came up with this idea of taking that same kind of technology and bringing it over to the SpinBrush. But please start at the very beginning of how the light went on, John.
Well, it wasn't quite as simple as walking the aisles of Walmart. After we sold the toy company to Hasbro in 1996 or 7, I got together with some designers, John Nottingham, John Spurk, and Larry Blaustein, and these guys we had done a lot of toys and candy together with my Cap Toys company. And we got together and decided, let's see if we can come up with an invention that would be, instead of having it come to us or a light bulb would go off, let's try and see if we can do it on purpose. And at that, we went to Walmart and we went to other stores and we put together a list of 100 ideas. And the idea that was at the top of the list was to make an electric toothbrush that would sell for $5.
Got it.
And we liked that the best because it was such a huge market. It was every boy, girl, man, woman, race, religion, country, whereas most of the other items on the list had some limitations on the market.
Okay.
Market size.
So, John, once you identified that was the project you wanted to take forward, what were the next steps?
Well, the next is because our group at that point we weren't young, and we had already done a lot of things, and nobody needed a small project. We set very strict criteria, and in a way, it was kind of audacious to try to do this, to make a electric toothbrush that would retail at Walmart for $5 and many other places at $6, when the going rate for electric toothbrushes were, $50 to $120. So the thing that we did next is we set very strict rules. One is it had to retail for $5 range. It had to cost maybe no more than $1.40 delivered, to our warehouse. It had to be a better toothbrush than a manual toothbrush.
Okay.
That was our market. We never really cared about the $70 electric toothbrush. We said if we could sell an electric toothbrush for $1 or $2 more than a manual and give them a much better brush,
yes,
that was our target. So it had to be better than that. We felt for $5 it had to last at least 6 months.
Okay.
We thought that if you were going to spend $5 and batteries are very expensive, the batteries would have to last for at least 3 months with normal brushing. That was a tough one because we wanted to make sure it was a great product and had enough torque and you really felt it, but we also didn't want to have the batteries burn out in a month because if you did, it really wasn't a good product. You'd spend $5 and every month you'd have to spend $3 or $3.95 for batteries.
Sure.
So that was a criterion, and then we had done in the candy industry. We had done Try Me packaging, which was worked out very well, where we make beautiful display boxes of different interactive candy items like the SpinPop, and we do it with say Bugs Bunny, where you press a button and Bugs Bunny would eat a carrot while the lollipop was spinning, and you could see it right on the shelf. It'd say Try Me.
Okay.
So we said, why don't we take this concept to the home and beauty market where it's never really been done, make a beautiful display, and make it so you can press the button in the package and hear that it's not a gimmick, that it's see the toothbrush turn and the power.
Got it.
And then if we can get it on the end caps of the aisles of Walmart and Target and the big stores and Walgreens, we attract their attention with the looks of our display, and people press the button. They see the $5 price point, and it's a very easy product to try.
Got it.
So that all of those things, that if any one of them had failed, we wouldn't have done. I mean, if the product would have ended up costing us so much that we'd have to retail for $7.99, we would have not gone forward because we just.
Well, John, how do you? I just want to interrupt you for just a minute. Let's back up for just a second. So you decide that you're going to go ahead. Do you build a prototype, or how did you develop that first model? Was it developed
the first thing
overseas?
that we did, and our partners had a prototype shop, so we had the resources. The
Okay.
first thing we did was build what's called a breadboard model. And that's a model that would work like the product, but doesn't have to look like it. So it could be some ugly thing that has this bristles
Okay.
attached and would do the action we want using the batteries, that we would be able to test the torque of the movement of the bristles, and that we'd be able to test battery life. And these were the big questions. Could we really get a battery life that would last long enough, and could we get it to have enough strength, like a plug-in electric toothbrush, to work? So those were really the things we worked on first. And once we achieved that with a breadboard, then we would go ahead and make a kind of looks like, works like prototype. And that
Okay.
would be something that you could hold in your hand and it would work like. It wouldn't be total finished glossy design and colors, but that you could try. And when we did that, it was interesting because our first spin brush actually rotated. It was just a rotating head. It didn't have the bottom bristles. And we'd brush our teeth with it, and after 2 weeks, all the bristles were pointed sideways, and it looked terrible.
Okay.
We learned that from doing it. And then we said, well, let's make it oscillate so that it's always going back and forth, so it's not going to leave it one direction.
Okay.
And we did that, and then I still didn't like it. I like to brush my teeth, and the way the Oral-B brush was, it was a round head that you kind of walk around your mouth with. It would oscillate. So I said, well, why don't we take that and leave the oscillating part, but let's add bristles to the bottom of it so it looks like a regular manual brush. We can add fixed bristles at the bottom, and then you can actually brush your teeth just like you do a regular brush with your eyes half closed in the morning, and don't have to learn anything new.
Okay.
And so we put those bristles in, and it worked out great. Everybody liked it. We all brushed like normal, plus you got the oscillating. And because of that, we were able to look and say, now that we've done this, we probably have something we can patent. And what we can patent is nobody's ever probably combined moving bristles with fixed bristles.
Okay.
So we filed that patent, and that meant, and we didn't say what kind of moving, so it could be oscillating, rotating, vibrating, and the bristles could be one of them or 400. There was no limit. It was very broad that way.
Okay.
So when we were done with that concept, we had a very broad patent that nobody really could copy, using a configuration
Sure.
that was like a toothbrush.
John, how long did that whole process take, and how much money did you have to spend to develop that looks like and works like prototype?
It took us about a year, and in fact, there was a time right in the middle we were going to quit. Right about 6 months into it, we just didn't think we could get the power, and it just wasn't working out, and we kind of got together and said, let's give it one more try.
All right.
But the whole process took about a year to get us to the threshold of having a product that was better than a manual brush that we could take to market. If you looked at that product that we brought to market compared to the product that's on the market today and that we developed even a year later, you'd almost say, oh, my God, how primitive
Okay.
it was. And in fact, the first 100,000 of them were kind of flawed, and we had to redesign it after the first 100,000 because the wires were getting wet inside and the batteries were going bad.
So there's always development. John, so you've got this looks pretty good, and it works well. What were your next steps? Who did you show it to?
Well, we were fortunate, and so I was, I don't know, I think I was 50 or so when we developed this. We couldn't have done this even 4 or 5 years earlier because the resources we brought to it is that we had made all these candy items and 100 million spinning lollipops where we knew from doing that we could get motors at certain very low prices and batteries at certain low prices, that if we had taken it before that, we would have had the product would have cost us double. But we also had, we've been selling at that point Walmart for many years in different categories, and
All right.
toys and energy products, and so we were able to go to Walmart, at least the buyers we knew, and say, could you introduce us to the oral care department, and tell them that we've been a good supplier for many years. So we were able to.
So you had the relationship already established with the SpinPop, so that made it pretty easy.
Yeah, with most of the retailers through the toy industry, we had some relationship.
What did they say when they first saw it, John?
Well,
Walmart.
In most cases, what we did is we bring down a case of them, and we'd not only give them the buyer, but we'd give them enough for everybody in the department, all the secretaries and assistant buyers, and they all took them home and they loved them. So
Correct.
it was, they saw the $5 price point, but the big question is this a gimmick or is this a real toothbrush? And so it wasn't a very difficult sale. And we had also we did a test market. We flew goods in 3 months before we shipped anyone else, and we got them at Myers stores in Michigan and Ohio, and we tested the sell-through, and found out that we were selling 7 spin brushes a day per store, compared to the best toothbrush on the market, which was Oral-B's Cross Action, that was selling 2 per week. So we already knew that if we could tell the buyers that we'll guarantee the sale, because we knew what it would do in the stores already from our own tests.
So you're in production now, and they're coming. You're making these overseas, and you've got them in Walmart and probably some other retailers, and things are going very, very well from a sales standpoint.
Right.
When do you decide, or when did P&G come on the scene, and did you go after that, John, or did they just show up at your door and said, "Look, John, we love this"?
We did go after it. We actually went to talk to them through their licensing department with the possibility of licensing the Crest name, which was a combination of actually looking to see if we could license the Crest name and to let them know about it. Our numbers were showing up on what's called IRI data, which is a report that all the retailers would turn in their numbers of sales per product in every category. So any retailer could look up and see that our sell-through at store level was basically, we were outselling everybody in the stores we were in.
All right.
What was the question that you asked there?
Well, it looks like you went to actually get the license of Crest, but when did they turn it around? When did they turn it around and say, "Gee, John, we would like to just buy your company"?
Well, I'll tell you how that happened. Is that after 2 or 3 months with working with them, and they ran tests on the product with consumers, they came back and said, "Good news, we'll license it to you."
Okay.
Which, at that point, we didn't really expect, and at a fair rate. And we thought about it, and we said, if we license the product to with the Crest brand, well, really, it's almost like selling them the company for nothing, because we will never be able to sell this in an open market to any other company because we'll be locked into their brand. And so we came back to them and said, as much as we were honored that they decided to do this, that we're actually going to have to pass on it. And from there, it went to, why don't we look at, P&G said, why don't we look at buying the company? And as I said, our sales numbers were already so high at retail, and we were only in the U.S., and they were multinational. Their big concern that they didn't know, and the competition that Colgate and Oral-B looked at was, is this a gimmick, or is this something that's real that will last for years?
All right. So how did you prove that, John? That it wasn't a gimmick?
They proved it themselves because they ran a series of tests with consumers, and it was the highest score they had ever gotten on any product they ever did, as far as consumer acceptance and consumers liking it. So from that, they said, this thing is real. This isn't just a gimmick because it's $5 and that's hot. This is a new direction. And at the time, Crest had slipped Crest toothpaste had slipped to number 2 after 30 years ahead of Colgate, and the P&G stock was at its all-time low. And Crest was a very high-profile brand for them, even though it wasn't in their top 10 brands at the time. From Wall Street standpoint, Crest was one of their most important brands, and slipping to number 2 was a problem for them. So finding an opportunity in oral care with our brush, and they also had in development at the same time white strips, which they were going to bring out. this was a chance for them to do something. And when they did after they did buy the company, they very highly publicized how progressive they were buying an outside product like this.
That's kind of unusual, isn't it, John?
Yeah, they did. They used that for about 3 years. It was their publicity, and their stock at that point. From that point on, certainly not just due to the SpinBrush, but from that point on, their stock went up $65 billion over the next 2.5 years.
So it took a few years just to work out the details of this deal.
No, we closed it in about 6 months.
Okay.
And in when they bought it, we were already at that point the number one selling toothbrush in the U.S. And I mean by week.
Wow.
And at the end of that year, they originally wanted to go to 3 more countries, and we really pushed it. And at the end of that year, they were in the first year that they owned it, they were in 60 countries, and the number one selling toothbrush in the world in 1 year. It was that in itself is a
That's
story.
impressive. John, would they have licensed this idea if you hadn't had the sales results? If you had showed this idea to them before you'd had some of the data from your sales, would they have licensed this idea to you, think?
I don't think so. And not only that, I don't think they would have done well, because P&G they're really the best company in the world at managing mature products, manage its distribution, sales, addition. They're not good at innovating a new category. And if they got it too soon, it just wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have been at Walmart every single day and getting it at the end cap every day. They would have done it once a quarter as an initiative, and they're just not set up for it. They're a wonderful company, but it's not their strength.
John, how much money did you have to put into your company, to get it started and get in the business before, until they came along? I mean, was it $1 million? Was it $2 million?
We put in $1.5 million. Originally $1 million, and then we put in another $500,000 when I told you the first 100,000 had a defect and we had to change things and eat some inventory. So we put $1.5 million in total. Was this nerve-wracking, John, the whole process? But you sound like you've been through this with your other businesses. So was it just business as normal, it something that was? It wasn't business as normal, because business as normal has Murphy, and Murphy's laws usually entering into it. This business it was just one of these things that went through the eye of the needle. It's just everything other than the 100,000 bad product, which we fixed very quickly.
Okay.
Everything worked according to plan. Even P&G was our target exit strategy. When we studied the market and saw who had the most strategic need for this, P&G was the company. And of any business I've been in, everything went according to plan. I've been in businesses since then that have not. So it's not like I made a breakthrough that would happen for one. It was just one of those things where all the stars were aligned.
Everything lined up. John, I guess looking at this and the SpinPops, I mean, people would say that lightning is, strike twice with you. Would you agree with that? Being involved in this?
I've been involved with products my whole life, so we've done it we have a product right now that's doing great. I don't know if you know the Schick titanium trimmer razor that just came out.
No.
It's a wonderful product. It's on TV and now.
Tell us about that, John. What is it?
That's their new razor that is a vibrating wet razor, and I forget how many blades it has, at least 4. Okay. And on the bottom of the handle has a power trimmer, so you can turn it over and trim your sideburns or mustache or beard, and it's a very cool product.
Nice.
We developed that when we did a $5 electric razor, a few products after the toothbrush that did very well for 2 years, and it started to go down, and we didn't feel like taking it down, so I just took it off the market. And while we were in the process of doing this, we invented this wet razor and we didn't want to get into that market because of Schick and Gillette and Schick are just too strong a competition.
Okay.
And there's too much consumer loyalty with their product.
Okay.
So instead, we took that product that was part of our razor business and sold it off to Schick. And we haven't been able to say anything about it for a few years, but now that it's not until it was on the market, which it just did. But
wow.
It's kind of a good example of, we've done products ourselves most of the time, but sometimes we've also sold them because in the oral care business with the SpinBrush, there was no brand loyalty. The people would buy either an Oral-B or a Reach or Colgate or Crest, and they would switch like they would switch sneakers. With whoever advertised last and was on the end cap. And having no brand loyalty, even though they were major companies, they all canceled each other out. So we were able to come in with a Dr. John SpinBrush, a non-brand, and consumers were willing to try it. In a razor, I would never try that with a Gillette or Schick owning 96% of the business.
Got it.
I don't think I'd get people to try our product.
Yes. Interesting.
it.
John, getting back to the SpinBrush and the deal that you cut with P&G, who came up with the number at the very end of the day? Was that something that took a long time? Was that your attorneys or accountants, or how did you determine that number, John?
Well, it was not a fixed number. I negotiated it. We sat there with 12 P&G guys.
They ganging up on you, John?
Well, I had done it before. I had sold a company to Gerber Foods, and I sold to Hasbro, and so I'd had experience when I got to this one. But there was a fixed amount of money that it was sold to plus a earn-out. So the fixed amount was a very comfortable amount of money for everybody. But we believed that if it would make P&G a fortune, we wanted to get what would be a fortune to us. And so we created an earn-out with them that worked out. If they achieve these numbers, it was worth paying us a crazy amount of money. And but I don't think they really believed they would achieve the numbers.
Okay.
And we did.
So
explain
the earn-out, John, if you would, to our listeners. How does that work?
Well, an earn-out can work in many different ways, but it's basically after we sell it for a certain fixed amount of money, we get paid, and then if they achieve certain goals, we would get more money. Now, how that is defined depends on every deal is different, and it's often very difficult to write the deal so that it's foolproof. That's the hardest part, is writing it so there's no secret advertising that a company can say it cost them and, to take away from the earn-out. But you try to make a deal with the earn-out that makes sense for both, so that if we achieve numbers, it was worth it to P&G to pay us so much money.
How has your life changed now, John, after landing that huge deal with P&G?
Well, first of all, I feel the same. I don't feel any different. The P&G deal was our biggest deal, but we had sold a company to Gerber Baby Foods and one to Hasbro, the toy company to Hasbro, and it didn't. So we had already made some money before this deal, so my life had changed probably more before the P&G deal.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it can change your life. I guess if anything, I've had to battle being motivated to continue to do new deals. And I kind of taken 5 or 6 years, so I haven't worked that hard, and now I'm suddenly I've got a new project that I'm working on, and I realize I like doing. It's like if you're a painter, you paint. It doesn't matter if you already sold a lot of your paintings. That's what you do.
That's very interesting. John, I want to thank you for sharing your story with our readers and listeners. I think it's fascinating, and it's remarkable. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate that you had me on your show.